Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Guilford's Affordable Housing Goals discussion. My name is Jamie Stein. I'm the new town planner for Guilford. And I want to welcome you. A few just little Zoom etiquette. If you could all just mute yourself for us, that would be great. I want to thank you for your time and attendance this evening. Our first selectman is not able to join us this evening, but he did want me to read some comments for y'all into the record. So I'll go ahead and do that. This is from First Selectman Matt Hoey. He says, "My apologies for my absence at tonight's meeting, but Cheryl and I have tickets to a concert at the Cape in Old Saybrook. Please do not mistake my choosing harmony in my household as a lack of commitment to actively working to increase access to affordable and workforce housing in our community. It is clear to me that to continue to thrive as a community, we need to create more opportunities for a more diverse population to live, work, and play in Guilford. We, like many similar communities, face challenges to increasing our stock of affordable housing. We cannot let those challenges deter us from goals that you will be discussing tonight. I also believe there is community support for this effort. The survey results are indicative of that. 77% of Guilford survey respondents believe the town has a responsibility to increase housing options for individuals and families that would like to live in our community but cannot afford the current cost of housing. Respondents also feel that there is not enough rental housing for seniors and those in our workforce. The same goes for home ownership opportunities. Our partnership with NeighborWorks New Horizons on the Woodruff property is one example of our commitment, and I am pleased to see the Hubbard Road proposal, an 8-30G project, has 30 units of the proposed 100 units being designated as affordable. Lastly, as I trust Jamie will talk to, we should strongly consider inclusionary zoning in the update to our zoning code. Thank you for your interest in and support of expanding access to affordable housing in Guilford. And for those of you who joined, I was just reading some comments from our first selectman who is not able to join us this evening, but is excited to hear the results of our discussion. I'd also like to thank Eugene and his team from the Council of Governments for organizing and facilitating this meeting. As you may know, just a little bit of background on kind of the process and what we're doing here. Last year, the Connecticut State Legislature passed Public Act 21-29, which basically required each municipality to adopt an affordable housing plan no later than June 1st, 2022, and update that plan every 5 years thereafter. Through a process facilitated by the Southern Connecticut Regional Council of Governments, Guilford is taking the steps to produce and approve an affordable housing plan by June 1st. The goal of tonight's meeting is to review the recently completed Guilford Affordable Housing Existing Conditions Report and engage in a facilitated discussion of Guilford's housing goals. The Existing Conditions Report will serve as the first section of the forthcoming Affordable Housing Plan and is aimed at establishing a baseline of current socioeconomic and demographic characteristics of Guilford. The results of this evening's goals discussion will be made available on the Planning and Zoning website for continuing public comment as the Planning and Zoning Department works with the Council of Governments toward a draft plan. Our estimated completion date for the draft plan is April 8th. We will then hold an additional public meeting. We'll open a 35-day comment period before we bring the draft plan to a vote. So there will be more opportunities to provide your input. I welcome your feedback, and I look forward to working with you on this. And so I'd like to hand it over to Eugene. Thank you.
Jamie, thank you for helping organize this meeting, and thank you all for attending. I'm Eugene Lifshitz. I'm the Senior Regional Planner with the South Central Regional Council of Governments. I have Andy Sirioli, our Municipal Shared Services Manager, joining us as well. We've been assisting the towns in creating these 8-30J compliant plans, as Jamie stated. We're essentially working with a excellent consultant team, RKG Associates. We have Eric YCG joining us from them. He's going to give you a highlight of the data presentation. It's going to be around 10 minutes, highlighting the main points from the existing conditions report. We also have David Fink with us. He's our housing policy expert, and he'll be facilitating the housing goals discussion. Once you get a brief overview of the potential need in the community, I'll help drive the discussion in that section. We'll transition back to Eric to go over some of the location analysis components that will be going into your plan. And then we'll kind of conclude with the next steps. As part of this effort, the plan that will be developed is going to be the Guilford Affordable Housing Plan. It's going to be for your community and for you to go through your adoption process. Part of this process, we are going to be having a regional conversation as well, which will lead to a development of a regional needs assessment piece that will be developed by RKG at the end of this process. So to transition, Eric, I'll kind of turn it over to you to go into the data review.
Great, thank you, Eugene. Hi, everyone. So yes, as Eugene mentioned, I'm going to, for about 10 minutes, run through some of the high-level data points from the existing conditions report, just to kind of orient everyone with some of the key findings from that to inform the housing goals discussion that David will facilitate. So with that, I will share my screen. Can everyone see that? Yep. Okay, great. Okay, so to get started, I'm going to first talk a little bit about the town's population and change in population by age. So in Guilford, unlike a lot of the towns in the SER-COG region, the population has remained fairly steady and is projected to decrease slightly through the year 2040. The town lost about 100 residents over the last decade and is projected to lose around 360 by 2040. This is likely the result of an aging population where deaths are slightly exceeding births over the next 20 years or so. This trend could be reversed by attracting more families to town and providing additional housing options for a wider range of the region's population. Looking at the figure on the right, Guilford's population by age follows similar trends to the SER-COG region when it comes to percentages of older residents, meaning those over the age of 65. This group comprises an increasing larger percent of the town's overall population and is outpacing growth in the region as well. Interestingly, though, we also see a jump in residents between the ages of 35 and 44, which is not like many of the other communities within the region. Across all other age brackets, Guilford saw net decreases in population. Turning over to household size and tenure, Guilford's occupied housing units are predominantly owner-occupied, comprising about 87% of all occupied units. This is very similar to many of the communities in the region. The town has also seen increases in smaller owner and renter households, particularly one-person owner and two-person renter, which is something we've seen in many of the other communities in the region. This may be the result of increases in both the younger and older populations. We've also seen increases in the larger 5-person renter and owner households, which is very interesting given the decreases in residents between the ages of 25 and 34, as well as under 18, which typically are your early family households. The growth in the aging population and these smaller household sizes could signify an opportunity for Guilford to capture more smaller households with a wider diversity of housing types. Taking a brief look at incomes, the median household income in Guilford is about $42,000 higher than the county. In the graphic on the right of the screen, the household incomes in Guilford continue to shift to the higher end. The blue peaks and valleys represent the household income distribution in 2015. And then, as you can see, the orange mass that moves to the right, incomes are increasing from those in 2015 to higher incomes in 2019, converging around that 125K mark. As incomes continue to increase, it is possible housing costs may continue to increase, signaling greater competition for an ever-tightening supply of housing within the town. Taking a look at the housing stock and construction permitting, like many of the communities in the region, Guilford did not permit nearly as much housing after the Great Recession as before. Rates of housing permits fell substantially after 2005 and since have been limited to permitting of mostly one-unit structures. This follows the town's current composition of housing types, with over 89% of housing units being single unit, and then about 11% or so of structures being 2 or more units. With this limited new construction and the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic, sale prices and rents in Guilford have been rising. This is a very common theme across the region as well as the nation as a whole. As you can see on the graphic on the left, from October 2019 to around November 2021, the median sale price for homes in Guilford rose from about $340K to $488K. That escalation continues to put owner-occupied units out of the price range of many residents, except for those in those highest income brackets. Similarly, on the figure on the right, rents in the town have also shifted, with much of the growth occurring from units priced between $1,500 or more per month. In 2011, rents over $1,500 a month comprised about 35% of units, and then in 2019, they comprised of around 49% of all units. These shifting rent prices reflect lower priced units that were below $1,000 a month moving into those higher rent categories. The same is likely for those that had rents between $1,500 to $1,900, shifting to those $2,000 a month price ranges. Again, these price escalations continue to place pressure on the lowest income households who continually have to pay more while salaries struggle to keep pace. Taking a look at housing cost burden, housing costs continue to rise faster than wages. We see increases in the number of households considered cost burdened in the town. Cost burden is a standard measure of those households that are paying more than 30% of their income on housing costs. Those households that are paying more than 50% are considered severely cost burdened, which are indicated with the orange and yellow boxes in the figure on the left. In Guilford, about 52% of all renter households are considered cost burdened, which reflects a rate a little bit higher than New Haven County as a whole. The cost burden figure for owner households is lower at around 28%, reflecting the higher income households compared to ownership housing costs. Cost burdening most often impacts our lowest income households, those earning 50% or less than the area median income. These households are the ones that benefit greatly from affordably priced housing options, but also the ones who struggle to find housing that's priced at what they can actually afford. Looking in terms of where Guilford stands at that 10% affordable housing requirement, it is at about 2.4% as of 2021, although I recently checked and the state released the 2021 numbers, and the town is at around 2.38%. To reach 10%, the town would need to add or qualify an equivalent of roughly 729 units that would count on the subsidized housing inventory. This may not mean brand new units, but that might be the fastest way to work towards compliance. And then lastly, taking a look at the housing affordability gap, we look at where the housing gaps are in the community. These two graphics compare the number of owner and renter units in your community that are priced at households in each of those different AMI brackets. In Guilford, like many of the communities, we see unit deficits for households earning less than 50% of AMI and those over 120% indicated in those orange bars. Those households at the 50% of AMI and below, particularly renters, have a very hard time finding housing that is priced affordably to what they earn. These units are typically publicly subsidized by a housing authority or nonprofit partner, and are very costly to build and keep affordable for long periods of time. So many households in the income category have to rent units that are priced higher than what they can technically afford, which is why you see these households tend to experience cost burdening at higher levels. On the other end of the income spectrum, households earning more than 120% of the area median income may not be able to find housing that is technically priced at what they can afford, where you have so many high income households and not as many units priced at those households price ranges. So what you have happen in many cases is lower income households have to rent up in the market and higher income households are buying down in the market, creating price pressures in the middle for units priced between 50 to 120%, which are indicated with those blue bars. So in thinking about the goals discussion, you may want to consider how future housing funds or programs could address some of these mismatches between the unit prices and household incomes. And with that, I believe that's my last slide. Yep. I will stop sharing and pass it over to David to talk about housing goals.
Well, thanks, Eric, and welcome everyone. It's nice to see some old friends here. Let me just preface this by saying that RKG has done great work on this plan and will actually draft and do the writing of the plan, but this is neither going to be RKG's plan or SCROG's plan or least of all my plan. It's going to be your plan. And so your input matters the most. And so what we'll do here is have a discussion about what your goals are for housing creation for the town. Eric and I will take some notes. We will draft a list of goals based on what we think we hear from you tonight, and send that to you. And that will not be carved in stone. So you will have the opportunity to add, delete, edit, otherwise reshape, and this will be your plan. Again, it'll be when we get that back from you, and as Jamie said, there will probably be a good opportunity for input from residents of the town. When we get that back from you, we will send you back, as Eugene said, and have a discussion with you about strategies to implement those goals. And again, those won't be carved in stone either. Those will be, and you'll have an opportunity to reshape those. So the timeline is tight. You have to adopt this plan and get it to the state by June 1st, but we think we can do it. And based on what I've seen from the people at RKG, they are somewhat superhuman. So I fully expect they'll be able to get that done. Let me just also say one thing. We sent you a list of goals, not in any way suggesting these are goals that your town should adopt, but we because we like to say around here that we never tell a town what to do, but we will tell you what other towns are doing. And the goals that we sent you were goals that other towns had adopted. Again, Guilford is not like all other towns. So some of the lists that we sent you may be irrelevant or just inapplicable. So we'll go through those things. I'll take these down. I should point out a couple of things that we've seen in other towns in the region that you may want to be thinking about. So for instance, we have towns in the region that are projected to see their populations decline markedly. Guilford's is projected to stay rather flat, maybe decline a little bit. Some towns are thinking, well, we need to get more people to come to live to town to spread the tax burden over more taxpayers. That's something that you may want to think about. As Eric pointed out, you are missing housing options for very low and moderate income people and for upper income people, and that puts price pressure on the middle, and that's why you have seen your home prices expand and your median monthly rent expand. And by the way, that median monthly rent figure of just under $1,500 was a 2019 figure. So I think it's fair to guess that that number is north of $1,500 a month now. And just so you understand, the basic rules of thumb are, Fannie Mae's rule of thumb is that with a median home price of about $500,000, somebody would have to earn about a third of that, or about $130,000 to $135,000 to afford the median sales price home in Guilford. In the same way, a median monthly rent of $15,000 you would need, in order to not spend more than 30% of your income, you'd need an annual income of about $62,000 to afford that median monthly rental unit in town. So that's kind of what you're looking at. And I'm gonna shut up right now and let you guys talk. And I don't know how you want to do this, but I think what we can probably do is you can either use the little button at the bottom of your screen to electronically raise your hands. You'll see reactions at the bottom. If you click on that, you can click on a raise your hand icon, or you can just raise your hand and I'll try to recognize you and get your thoughts. So have at it. I'm going to take some notes. Who wants to go first? Don't all speak at once.
Like Larry.
Yep.
Okay, go ahead. Up there, Larry?
Yeah, so in the current legislature, a bill that's coming to be discussed that builds on the one that you referred to from last time is emphasizing walkable neighborhoods and transportation-oriented neighborhoods.
Right.
And in our town, that would mean putting something between the train station and say the town green. Um, and to the extent that properties become available and then can be converted to multi housing units. And the desirability of that is that you reduce the need for cars because you could walk to the train station and you could walk into town. You increase foot traffic around the businesses all around the green. Um, and so to have a walkable community saves with air pollution, and it also reduces the cost because, as you point out, the rents are pretty steep, and housing prices, condominium, for example, prices are high.
Sure.
I noticed there on Hubbard Road, you've got a planned housing unit that you referred to. 30% of the units affordable as the law, as the ordinances define it. But there's no way to walk from there to Route 1, where you have a lot of businesses. It's not that far a walk, but to put a sidewalk, the place you're going to have a problem is going underneath 95, because that's a tight space to put a sidewalk. So getting in, you're not going to get a bus route going out to that development because the density of people isn't enough. So trying to get more housing along the Route 1 corridor, for example, where the buses run, would be another area where you could have a walking community with access to public transportation.
Okay.
So I'll stop at that point. That's the crux of it. And the Desegregate CT website talks about this plan and the various ins and outs of it. So I recommend that you take a look at that.
Thank you, Larry. Next.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, sure.
This is Sean Cosgrove. I think based on the last comments about Hubbard Road and the access to downtown, the Safe Streets committee that is working on a variety of ideas for downtown Guilford is working on a plan to create a pathway, a better pathway under Route 95. And it may take a while for that to come to fruition, but there may come a time when people from a development on Hubbard Road could make their way down to downtown Guilford. But I think bus routes also have a big part to play.
Okay. Just to jog, maybe prime the pump here a little bit. Some towns have looked at other issues. For instance, I don't know if you are seeing baby boomers, empty nesters who've lived in town for 30, 40 years wanting to stay in town. Are they seeking options to stay in town? Are you similarly seeing locations that have one-story commercial structures that could handle a second or third story of residential structure, which helps defray the commercial rent and also provides shoppers for that merchant downstairs, in addition to being a place where you can put a little more density? I mean, those are some of the things people talk about and other towns are thinking about. Are you seeing any of those phenomena? Tim? I think you're muted, Tim.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Here we go. I hit the wrong button. So on the sidewalk piece that Sean just alluded to, that's actually appropriated. So the sidewalk will go up 77 to just across from the public safety complex. And then we need to work on a plan for opening up Hubbard Road. And that's something, I'm on the Safe Streets Task Force, so that's something we have talked about. I'm not a big fan of the new Dunkin' Donuts building that's going up on Route 1 with the drive-through, but I have to applaud the developers in that they're putting in rental housing above retail. So I don't know if that was something that was suggested to them by the town or if they just came up on that themselves. But I think it's really good if we can have, those kinds of discussions with developers, as David just alluded to, where we say you're putting in retail rather than putting an office up above. Why don't you open those up to housing? And then we start to build in they're one-offs, but a lot of one-offs start to add up to meeting what we need to do.
Sure.
So.
Thanks. Blaze, you have your hand up?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for this data. You guys did a really good job. I had a question about the data. Is that okay to ask?
Yes.
Eric, is that okay to ask?
Yeah. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, just real quick. I was just wondering if you had some more insight. I had a comment on goals, but just on the data, I was wondering what is the meaning behind the really large increase in people without a high school education in town? Is there some more insight in that? It looked like in the report there was a pretty significant increase commented on that.
Yes. So we've seen that in a few of the towns. There have been things like major employers like Amazon with new warehouses and these types of things where you see this huge influx of new workers, a lot of them falling within that educational payment category. So that could just mean that a bunch of people from some of these major employers are moving into town. And that's where that rises from.
Oh, interesting. Thank you. And then on the goals, I just had a comment. I wanted to second, I think it was Larry's comments on the current proposal on transit-oriented development. I think it's a really strong proposal and would also have some positive impacts from, specifically for Guilford. I live on Water Street in town. So I think that the walkability is just really important, and the focus on some of the affordable housing in the areas that are in close proximity to the train station and to the bus routes it's one of the main reasons actually that my wife and I had relocated to Guilford. So would just really like to see some more multifamily housing in this area, but also that keeps in with the historic character as well of the town. I think that you can, through some zoning, hopefully we can have some, charming style buildings or, especially buildings that are within the green. I think that we can still allow multifamily buildings that, fit within the charming downtown nature that we have too, as well as some affordable housing units. So I think that's an important piece because that's really something that is attractive to the Guilford experience. And also, I think that would be something that would be nice to share with more people, especially in a walkable, bike-friendly downtown area. I think that's a really key piece. And those are some of my comments. This is great work. Thank you, everyone.
Relative to that, and I wanted to ask a question, which again, I'd like some response to. A number of towns that are looking purposefully at particular areas, whether it's commercial strips or station areas, have recognized they need to do what cities have done for a long time, which is to assess and survey the property owners nearby, because some towns that are not used to proactive housing creation don't know how to proactively approach property owners and find out if those properties might be available for multifamily development. They tend to stick with the usual suspects of municipally owned or vacant or for sale properties. And so if you were going to look at particular areas like the area between the green and the train station, would that be a goal that you would want to list, that we should assess and survey property owners to see if their properties might be for sale and available for development?
Living in the downtown area, I don't want to speak for anyone else, but just living down here, I think that would be a great idea because it would, a lot of people, are, I think, recently thinking about these things, and especially with an aging population in the area from the data, it looks like it might also be a good way to help people age in place, but they might not think of it on their own. So surveying people to do that, and also some of my fellow neighbors, I think would be a good idea and would also help be an educational tool for them. So I think that would be a great idea.
Other thoughts about goals?
David, before we move on to some of the individuals who have their hand raised, Lizzie Rosenthal asked in the comments,
Okay.
are the empty nesters who want to downsize and stay is that an affordable housing issue? Sorry, I can repeat that and
No,
actually read a sentence if you'd like.
I think I got it.
Okay.
I mean, they are in other towns. Again, it's hard to know in your town. You'd have to assess that. Many empty nesters have fixed incomes and are not that interested any longer in paying property taxes. And if they can't rake the leaves and shovel the snow any longer, they don't want to pay other people to do it. And they don't have to pay to fix the boiler. They want the landlord to do that. So it is an affordable housing issue. Again, you have to kind of assess what's available. But as we talked about, and I was in Guilford, as Liza and MJ know, a number of years ago in assessing this, I think there was a kind of understanding, or at least message, that healthy towns need a wide array of housing options because healthy towns have a wide array of people with different needs. So that's the thing I think to look at and to kind of figure out. I mean, right now, as you know, your housing stock is skewed to single family and skewed to owner occupied housing. And so can you figure out a way to create some more of these different housing options, again, for not just for empty nesters and baby boomers who want to downsize. Let's see, who do we have there? Larry, did you not take your hand down, or you raised it again?
I raised it again, just to build on some of the earlier comments. It's important that our teachers are able to afford a place in town. Our police, our various service sector, and we're having a problem. When I look at that data, we're having a problem that's in so many parts of the country, that the people that we want to serve us in town can't afford to live in town.
Right.
And so I think that's an important goal too, along with young families. People are growing up, getting through high school and college, and then moving out of state because they can't afford to live here. And if we look at the school population, our schools, Guilford High School, I was taking a look at that, is got plenty of space where we don't have enough students to fill the space. One of the things is the open schooling program that the district is looking at to try and fill spaces by bringing people from out of town. So having as a goal, keeping our young people in town and keeping our police and fire and the people that we would like to be part of the community that serve our community, it would be a great goal.
Thanks, sorry, I got that. Okay, MJ and then Ed.
Hi, I wanted to thank everybody for their work on the proposal. And I also wanted to sort of ask a question to build on. One of the challenges we have here is that we don't have a sewer system. And so where we have building density is where we want housing density, is where sometimes it doesn't work. And so I wonder if anyone has done some creative thinking about that, because as a town, we're mostly zoned residential. So we should be able to build housing, but we can't necessarily build it where we want it. And I wonder if anybody has taken a creative approach to that.
Well, some towns are looking to where they can extend sewer lines, existing sewer lines, or tap into neighboring towns' sewers. I think Eric and the people at RKG will have some strategies for how to do that. And the last part of our time together tonight, he'll go through the locational analysis, and maybe you can help guide him to the locations in town that we've at least draft it, and you can help reshape that to say, well, this is maybe where we can look to put the housing. But it's obviously an issue, as you know better than anyone, designing and building housing, that you can't put it where the wastewater has no place to go. So we will talk about that, but it's an excellent point, obviously. Ed?
Thank you, David. I'm Ed Seibert, and in the interest of complete and full honest disclosure, I will tell you that I am the board chair of NeighborWorks New Horizons, who is developing the Woodruff property in Guilford. And I'm also on the town committee, along with Mary Jo and others who have been working on affordable housing for, what is it now, 7, 8 years, Mary Jo, and we've still got a long way to go. My comment is, very briefly, we have focused almost exclusively on downtown Guilford. And it is my understanding from conversations that others have had with me is that there is also a strong need for affordable housing in the north part of Guilford. Guilford is a narrow and long north to south town. And from Route 80 north, there's a lot of open space, a lot of farmland, but there are a lot of, I believe, opportunities to develop affordable housing in that part of the community where I've been told there is a tremendous need. And I just like to see, not that I have anything wrong or any objection to focusing on the downtown area and the proximity to transportation and shopping at all. Part of that has been forced upon us by the state with the money that they have provided that insisted that we only look in those specific areas. But I do think there are other parts of this community, this town, especially in the northern area, that can benefit from affordable housing.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll get that down on the list, and I think that's a good goal, aspirational. Other thoughts? Can I ask this other question? I know that Guilford, because I was involved, did a really fine job of communication and discussion and education of the residents in town about housing creation several years ago. We are asking this of every town because we have had discussions at SCROG about a 4th year of our housing effort. As many of you know, this is the 3rd year, and we're not going to let it lie. And part of the discussion has been about whether we need to help towns that want the help, and I'll have to take us up on it, but that towns that want the help, we would look to facilitate discussions in the town so that people, residents, could understand what housing the town has and what it needs and how it might meet those needs and what affordable housing is and what it isn't and who can live in it and who can't, who does live in it and who doesn't. So I guess what I'm asking is, to what degree do you think it would be a good idea to list on the goals a more facilitated discussion in town to help people and residents of town understand the issue better? Is that a good idea as far as you're concerned? We can take a vote. I see MJ nodding her head. Yeah, okay. Well, we'll put it on the list and you guys can take it off if you want to. Okay. All right. Thanks a lot. Okay. Any further thoughts? Because I need to hand it over to back to Eric to do the location analysis. Wait, I see a couple of, Keith, did you want to weigh in?
Sure, Rod, thank you very much. Keith Bishop. I'll weigh in from the standpoint of past chair and current board member on the Land Acquisition Commission here in Guilford. And part of our charge is to protect and have the land available for multiple purposes, A, B, and C being open space preservation, combo land for municipal and open space activities, such as, ball field recreation areas that contribute to the quality of life, as well as for future municipal uses. One of the last, the last property that we purchased and recommended the Board of Selectmen was approximately 20 acres at the junction of Long Hill Road and Route 80 that is earmarked and under study for the town's Public Works Department to move there out of the area down by the train station and the flood area, et cetera. So I just want to weigh in here that, another side of the affordability housing is the attraction of what makes Guilford Guilford, and has been that way over centuries. And part of that is then not having part of that character and lands that are used for farm production in particular, and land that is capable of food production to be absconded by developers, which is easy targeted properties to forever take out of our food production. And where do we get our food from? What's the transportation infrastructure and the other pieces that, us here in the Northeast that do not have enough food grown nearby to support us. So that local food production piece of it, and maintaining the quality and the balance there, and to not target open, affordable housing places on stuff that is easy to go in and throw in a septic system, et cetera, because it is a clear farm field. So I want to throw that in, balanced out with, definitely we have a need as a local business for people to hire and have jobs here that can afford to live in the area, not travel too far to work. And that's another important piece of what the data that you've shown here is. Those are my quick comments.
Well, thanks. Yeah, that's always a balance. And I'm not sure I have the numbers. And Eric, I'm not sure you have them either. But I did want to raise one more point that other towns have looked at where, and I think someone alluded to this earlier, that towns have looked at the number of employees who come to work in the town to do the kinds of jobs that are needed in the town, but may not pay enough so that they can afford to live in town. How much of that is a goal? I know you talked about teachers and police officers and service workers. Is that a goal to list to make sure that the people who are working in town can afford to live there, or is that not quite as important?
Keith Bishop again, I would say that is important. Again, as a former Board of Ed member, then we'd like to have our teachers to be as close to town and students as possible for those who wish to do so, as well as decrease transportation costs and all the pollution, et cetera, that goes along with the further you travel to work, the more energy that's expended.
Okay, MJ, you have your hand up again?
Well, yeah, I would say I agree with that. And sort of along those lines, building on it, one of the things I've thought Guilford might be able to do successfully is accessory apartments. We, not only have single family homes, but we have big single family homes, and, an efficient use of space where maybe two households could occupy a building, I think is something that maybe our infrastructure supports more easily. And I'd like to see that encouraged in our plan.
Okay. All right, great. Unless there are further thoughts, I need to leave Eric some time to go through the locational analysis. So any last?
David, one other comment from the chat box from Liza. It says, Guilford is demographically about 90% made up of white people. How can we make our community more welcoming? Will that be part of this discussion?
Well, as you know, in the survey, and good point, Liza, in the survey that we wrote and you guys conducted in your town, the final question was, do you think it's the town's responsibility to open itself up to allow people who want to live in Guilford to come live here? It gets into that issue unless you put it, and you guys can always change this. We'll list that, the idea of making it easier for people who can't live in town now to come live in Guilford, unless you want to tell me right now to put it another way. Okay, I think we'll leave it there. And Eric, turn it over to you.
Cool, thanks, David. So I'm going to share my screen again in a moment, and it will show my colleague who's also named Eric took a site visit with David and went through Guilford, and from his site visit and from the town's POCD, he put together this map, which, as you can see with the circles indicated in yellow, were areas to potentially consider for continuing to look for development opportunities for housing. And so, again, this is a rough cut from his visit. This is meant for your reaction. If there's places we're missing or you want to make these areas smaller, I can edit this on the fly. I can also zoom into particular parts of town if you want to discuss specific parcels or neighborhoods. I guess I'll just open it up the floor for anyone's reaction. I should also mention I can't see people's face, like the raise hand. So Andy or someone, if you want to just call on people.
Will do.
Cool, thank you. So any initial thoughts from anyone regarding any of these proposed locate? Again, these were pulled from the town's POCD, so a lot of these reflect what's already been previously looked at within the town. But any thoughts would be great.
Mary Jo, I saw in the comments that you had said we may want to add Route 1 West. Did you want to elaborate on that?
Oh, I see it's in there. It's the whole Route 1 you highlighted, right? That's all included.
Yep. Yeah, I know there was also some mention about limitations due to lack of sewer lines. So I don't know if anyone wants to elaborate on that. Are there anything near bordering towns that they know of? I know in some other communities they were considering developments near town borders where they could kind of tap into other sewer lines. I don't know, is there any thoughts on that? Or I know there was mention too in opportunities in North Guilford. Anyone want to weigh in on that potentially?
Isn't there a sewer line in Brantford that came up to the Guilford town line and it just wasn't extended because at the time Guilford didn't want it? Or have I got that confused? Could that
No,
line simply be extended?
You're not confused. It was Branford refused to allow us in Guilford to attach to their sewer line. Branford turned us down.
I see.
Ed, when was that?
Well, it was before I got involved, so it's got to be 15 odd years ago at least.
I think it would be a great discussion to reopen. I mean,
I would agree.
you know,
I mean, the only thing that's stopping or slowing development of Route 1 West.
Yeah.
There's plenty of land available.
And transit.
And transit. One issue that, and this came out of the work that our committee did that Mary Jo and I were on with the Guilford Foundation. Part of the problem with that land across that corridor is a lot of it is either ledge rock or wetlands, and neither one are buildable. But there is plenty of land.
And there are going to be a number of smaller developments sort of at the top of the hill. There's a condo and a townhouse complex that are in discussion right now. So we are going to start seeing more density out that way anyway.
And there were also some ideas where you would take a piece of land that is on Route 1 there, and on the Route 1 aspect of it or side of it, you would have some commercial development, and then in the land behind it, you'd have the residential development. Get a mixed use.
Yeah, and that'd be very consistent with the idea of walkable communities.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Can I ask, can you show us the areas 3, and then there was another area 2 way in the north of town? What was going on there?
So we have, I can go to 3 first. That is down. So that's the
That's,
station down here. And then the second area was marked as the village areas, which let me zoom in. Looks like along Ledge Hill Road, Church Road, around here.
I see. Yeah, got it.
that's the historic district around Melissa Jones and the churches.
Okay, yeah.
Is everyone okay with these, the areas that have been highlighted thus far? Are there any others that aren't highlighted that you would like to mention or further discuss?
Well,
I would just add to Tim's comment about that area 2 up on County Road, Church Road. That a lot of that land has been already set aside, and it's not really suitable.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think there are other better opportunities in North Guilford. That's that's sort of bucolic.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's picture book Guilford, and we've got some other places where we could do better.
Yep, I agree.
I still would like to have someone look at the Route 80 corridor. That I think, especially on the west side of town, there might be some opportunities.
I'm not sure about that, Ed. With the purchase of the property that the town made on Route 80 and Long Hill Road, there really is not much left. I'm not sure what other people would say, but
Well, I was told probably 10 years ago that there's a very sizable piece of land on Route 80 near Route 77, close to 80 acres, that could be made available.
I wouldn't know about that.
That's not the old Fisherman's Nook, is it?
That's not 80 acres. That's much smaller, and that was just purchased. That was just purchased by someone else to make a environmental camp.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure what you're referring to.
Okay. I don't know how confidential this is, but it was told to me that there is a sizable piece of land on Route 80, either at the juncture of 77, sort of catty corner across from Dudley Farm, or near it, that is owned by the Catholic Archdiocese when they were planning to build a second Catholic church in Guilford. And they decided not to do it, but I was told that they still own the land and would like to get out of the real estate business and get rid of that piece of land.
Yeah, that was bought by the town last year on the corner of Route 80 and Long Hill Road.
No, I'm talking about the corner of 77 and Long Hill Road. Excuse me, and Route 80. 77 and 80 across from Dudley Farm.
Ed, you're misinformed as far as the location there. So that property is what we just purchased that I referred to earlier. It's Keith Bishop. It's around 20 to 25 acres. And if you zoom in on the map, you'll see that there's a green open space block at the junction of just under the word State Highway 80.
Okay.
About in the middle of the screen there. There's
It's where
very
the arrow
limited-
is?
Just to the left of the arrow. There, that big square in the green square in the middle, that's the property we just purchased by the town.
Where is Route 77 on this?
Over by Greystone Way and Greenbrier Drive, that's where 77 is
Yeah.
underneath the E's.
Okay, so there's not an open piece at the intersection of 77 and 80 on the southwest corner?
No, that's all built up, and then you've got the East River or the West River that goes right parallel
Oh,
to
okay.
77.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, unfortunately, North Guilford has a lot of ledge, rock outcropping, and suitability for septic systems and inland wetlands crossings of that make any of the larger pieces that are left a challenge.
Yeah.
When you look to the north and the east of 77 and Route 80, that's all what we call broomstick ledges, and it is extremely rugged and rocky. I would urge to be thinking about for affordable housing, you want to have that on main corridors as much as possible. Somebody else mentioned that earlier, so that you've got ease of transportation and the public potential of adding public, transportation systems into that.
And on the other side of that, we'd like to keep undeveloped land, farmland, and forest land as undeveloped.
Yeah.
And I think that
Right.
should be an
That's
important
what the
goal.
corridor is.
Okay, so it sounds like, if everyone's comfortable with, I'm gonna remove this then, it sounds like this is not a very viable,
That's a great idea.
okay. Excellent, thank you. So any further comments? I can zoom back out. I know it's hard to see from the Zoom, but I'm happy to zoom in anywhere.
I would just add one thing. That area that is, I think, labeled, is it 3?
Yes.
Okay, so there's a long-term plan that does relate to the relocation of the town works to the property bought on Route 80 and Long Hill Road. And that area is very likely to be developable, whether it's affordable or not, but its proximity to the train station will make it a very, very desirable area of the town to live in, and it will be walkable. Which, I'm sure Tim could comment on the Safe Streets, committee's work on that, but that's my only comment, that is part of the strategic plan for the town.
And that's also where the current affordable housing development is going
Right.
in.
Right.
If I might, Eric, it's Jamie. I just wanted to say to that extent and to some of the comments about along the Route 1 corridor, we have on the Planning and Zoning Commission and in town seen quite a few multifamily developments along the Route 1 corridor, and they're not at this point, they're of a fairly high market value. And so for the Route 1 corridor, as well as this Region 3 that we're showing, the notion of inclusionary zoning has come up as a discussion point. And I'm just wondering if Eric or Larry, or I'm sorry, David, you could comment a little bit on other towns of Guilford size that are thinking about inclusionary zoning in their regulations.
A number of towns in Connecticut have done that, particularly those that have a limited number of locations where they can put the housing. So they want to take advantage of whatever density they can muster. I would say we talked to Madison about this. We talked to Woodbridge about this. In towns that have very little or relatively little multifamily housing, the demand is so strong that any multifamily housing that's built, the market rate housing gets rented out in about 6 weeks after the units become available. So developers, if pressed, can normally afford to make a portion of the units affordable at 80, even 60% of median income and still make a fair amount of money. So again, you have to figure out in inclusionary zoning ordinance, there are lots of things to think about. Not every area or market of the town is going to be the same and command the same prices and have the same development costs. But I would say that given the relatively small amount of multifamily housing in town, a developer who builds any number of multifamily units will probably be able to include an income restricted set aside and still make some money. So I don't think you'll be driving developers away.
This is Keith Bishop again. If you zoom in on the map to the number 1 on the far western side of Route 1 corridor, where it says Bruce Lane and Kenneth Circle, that was developed 5 decades or so ago, and the percolation test and so forth for the density of housing there has never panned out. And so that is very sparse as far as where houses are in that particular area. But that being right on the Route 1 corridor, having housing already in that area, if there was a septic system package stuff that could be put together for that area, there may be some stuff that can be done there. I have not researched who the ownership of the lots and the excess stuff is outside of the farmland that is adjacent to it, but that's an area itself that is removed from most other neighborhoods as far as what the planning process and the not in my backyard situation would be. But as I understand it, that is strictly limited by septic capacity in that area.
And that could be a perfect dip in the pond to get Branford to give us some sewer capacity there.
It could be, Tim. Yep. Good point.
Yes, definitely.
I think the problem with Brantford is that they're developing too, and they want that capacity for their town. I think since this is a regional effort, it would be nice if we put some pressure on the state to approve some alternate septic treatment that is used in other states like Massachusetts that we seem not to be able to do here.
And also they have this thing in Massachusetts called the Massachusetts Water Resources Authority, which is a wonderful governing body over many towns that oversees sewers and things like that. I really do think somewhere in our plan, we have to gently hint that we need some regional structure so that plays in the same together and does resources.
So a question for the people from the Southern Connecticut group. Maybe you're only familiar with, our region, which stretches from New Haven. I think, does it go further east than Madison?
No, yes, it goes from Milford to Madison up to Meriden.
Okay, and so any pointers or maybe anecdotal information about cooperation between towns you might offer us? Because this idea that Keith just mentioned and Tim kind of voiced over about this area, to the west near Branford, and the sewer issue is kind of intriguing, but it requires cooperation. And so what examples are you familiar with, if any, that could give us some guidance on that?
I'm not familiar with potential examples at this time. I don't know if Eric or David are. I know that there will be regional strategies developed, and I think this is really great insight that we'll incorporate into that discussion. The housing aspect, it's a regional need. It's not isolated to one or two towns in our region or the state in general. So we will be exploring regional strategies. We will be exploring methods to kind of speak to the state as we do some of that analysis and have those discussions as we go along. We just haven't gotten to that point yet in this process.
Okay, but you as a group have been in touch with each and every town in this region.
Yes.
Okay. So I would just ask you to maybe come back to us at a future meeting and talk to us about examples of cooperation, whether it be relative to sewage or land use or land conservation. I would just be more interested in examples of that kind of cooperation town to town. Thank you.
Sean, we'll collect that. I mean, I do know that over the years, and this is a while ago, that Middletown has talked to Durham, Colchester has talked to Willimantic, Barkhamsted has talked to Winstead. There have been discussions. I think what Eugene was alluding to is that I think we can be in touch with DEP and DPH and get an idea of whether there have been such projects around the state. So we will.
I think Old Lyme and East Lyme are engaged in that right now.
Yeah, just the focus of the focus at this stage is making sure we could get the municipal input, because essentially RKG will be drafting 13 separate plans to meet those 8-30J requirements. So that's what we're focusing right now. But again, we will get into those issues sooner than later, and we could bring back to you some of those examples.
I don't envy you dealing with 13 different municipalities, but we welcome your input. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Hey, if there's no other comments about the location analysis, I appreciate all the feedback. That's very helpful. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and pass it back over to Eugene for next steps and closing remarks.
Okay. Thank you, Eric. So I just wanted to give you an idea of the timeline as we go forward with this, and Jamie brought up some of it in the beginning of the meeting. So the legislation requires the municipalities to have their plans adopted by June 1st, 2022. So there's not too much time left. RKG will be drafting these plans and having a draft ready for posting during the first week of April. They'll help you meet your 35-day notice requirement. During that time, again, we'll be broaching and having more in-depth conversations regarding the regional piece to this. And I'm really glad it was brought up here, and because this is something we will be looking at, and this gives us some broader ideas to explore as we address those types of strategies as well. So again, I'd like to thank Jamie for helping me organize this, and thank you all for participating in this meeting.
Thank you, Eugene. Thank you, David. Thank you, Eric. And thank you all for your attendance and your great comments. We'll be working to assemble them and hopefully offer an opportunity to continue submitting your feedback as we move towards the draft plan. Okay. Thank you. Good night.
Good night all.
Thank you.
Good night.